Every day, the poor waitress tied her worn apron and stepped into the small roadside cafe, knowing that each shift was a fight to survive. Her wages barely covered rent, food, and the medicine her mother depended on. Still, she carried herself with quiet dignity, offering tired smiles to strangers who never noticed her struggles. Kindness, for her, wasn't a luxury, it was a habit. One rainy evening, she noticed a young man sitting alone at a corner table. His clothes were old, his hands trembling as he stared at an untouched plate. When it came time to pay, he froze. The shame in his eyes said everything. He had no money. The manager grew impatient, and whispers filled the cafe. Without thinking, the waitress stepped forward. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the money she had been saving for her mother's medicine. It was all she had. Placing it on the counter, she softly said she would cover the bill. The young man tried to refuse, his voice cracking as he apologized again and again. She only smiled and told him that everyone needs help sometimes. That night, she walked home under flickering streetlights with an empty purse but a strangely peaceful heart. She didn't expect gratitude, praise, or anything in return. To her, it was just the right thing to do. What she didn't know was that her simple act of compassion had reached someone whose life was tied to sacrifice, loyalty, and honor. By choosing kindness over fear, she had unknowingly set in motion events that would transform her quiet, invisible life forever. The next morning began like any other for the waitress, early, quiet, and heavy with worry. Her feet ached as she unlocked the cafe, her mind still replaying the moment she had given away her last money. She wondered how she would manage the coming days, unaware that the truth was already moving toward her. Outside the cafe, the sound of engines broke the silence. Military trucks rolled down the street and stopped one by one. Soldiers in full uniform stepped out, forming perfect lines. Passers-by froze. The cafe staff stared in disbelief as more vehicles arrived, their presence commanding respect and fear. Then she saw him. The young man from the night before walked forward, no longer dressed in worn clothes. He stood tall in a decorated military uniform, medals shining across his chest. His posture was firm, his eyes steady, yet when he looked at her, they softened with gratitude. He was not a beggar. He was a highly trained officer on a covert assignment, testing the limits of trust and humanity while returning from the battlefield. Exhausted, wounded, and hungry, he had entered the cafe as an ordinary man, hiding a life filled with danger and sacrifice. Before everyone, he revealed the truth. He spoke of missions that could never be named, of comrades lost, and of nights spent protecting people who would never know his face. He explained that her kindness came in a moment when he had lost faith not in the world, but in himself. That single act of compassion reminded him what he was fighting for. What seemed like a small gesture had crossed the boundaries of class, power, and secrecy. Her kindness had reached the heart of a man bound by duty, honor, and sacrifice, and the world was about to witness the impact of her selfless choice. The cafe door swung open, and the cold morning air carried an unusual sense of anticipation. The waitress, exhausted from her night shift, barely noticed the crowd gathering outside. But then, a low rumble grew louder, hundreds of boots hitting the pavement in unison. She stepped out, and her eyes widened in disbelief. 300 soldiers, perfectly lined up in formation, stood at attention. Their polished uniforms gleamed under the morning sun, their expressions solemn yet filled with admiration. The young man she had helped the day before now stood in front of them, his metal-adorned chest glinting as he raised a hand in salute, not to them, but to her. Her kindness saved more than a moment. It reminded us what humanity truly means. He announced, his voice carrying across the square. Today, we honor her. The soldiers moved as one, presenting a ceremonial salute. Some eyes glistened with emotion. Some whispered words of gratitude she could barely hear. She felt frozen, overwhelmed by the sight. Ordinary people in uniforms, representing courage, discipline, and duty, paying homage to her simple act of compassion. For the first time, she realized that her small, selfless gesture, spending her last savings to help a stranger, had rippled far beyond her imagination. Her world, once confined to a tiny cafe and unpaid bills, now stood at the center of awe and honor. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped forward, unable to believe the extraordinary recognition. In that moment, the line between ordinary and heroic vanished. She understood the truth. Genuine kindness, no matter how small, commands respect, transcends barriers, and leaves an indelible mark on the world. That day, a poor waitress became a symbol not for wealth, fame, or power, but for the enduring strength of the human heart.